The underlying message is to postpone judgment of others and yourself and find the positive through line. That's it.
This is the Workplace Therapist Show. Of course, I'm your host, Brandon Smith. And our guest today on the show is Erin Diehl. So today we're going to be talking about improv. Erin is a business improv edutainer, fail-fluencer, and professional Zoombie. She's the proud host of the Improve It podcast, which helps develop leaders and teams through play, improv, and experiential learning. So I loved my conversation with Erin. We did a deeper dive into improv and actually pivoted a little bit and talked about her own personal journey over the last few years, I'm sure pandemic driven, and some of the ways that she's learned to leverage improv to help her realize her very best self and how she teaches that to others. So I took lots of notes, but pay attention to some of the points that Erin makes on those little subtle things that she's done that have really helped her unlock her potential, so you can too. Erin, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Excited for our conversation today. Before we jump into that, maybe a good starting place for my listeners that maybe aren't as familiar with you and your work, share with us a little bit about what you do, and then I would love to hear the journey that got you there.
Yes. So I am the founder of a company called Improve It, and we use improv comedy to help professionals become their best selves. And that is through play, laughter, experiential learning. We train on power skills. So we don't call them soft skills, we call them power skills. And to date, I have a team of 22 improv professionals all over the United States. And this is my favorite stat of all, Brandon. We have officially trained over 32,000 people to chicken dance. Bragging rights. But no, I definitely growing up did not think that this would be my career. I knew I'd love to make people laugh. And so for a long time, I thought maybe I'll become a florist and make people happy when I provide them with this beautiful floral arrangement. But turns out I'm horrible at keeping plants alive. I had a plant, Zoe de Plantel, and she died on impact upon arriving to my house. And so I decided, let's try comedy. And I've always enjoyed being on stage. I've been on stage since I was 3 years old. Grew up in the theater and doing sketch comedy, moved to Chicago, fell in love with improv, wanted to be a talk show host. So that's why I moved to Chicago, if I'm being real honest. That I was supposed to be Oprah, Brandon. And then fell in love with the art form and saw it work in my life, professionally, personally, and knew that the application had the ability to help so many people. This is the most Cliff Notes version of this story I've ever given, believe it or not. So that's it in a nutshell. But ultimately, the goal is to help people realize their own brilliance, have their own aha, ha-ha moments, that's what I like to call them, and see the potential that they can bring to any situation at work or even in their life through play. And they can feel that because improv is a very experiential teaching tool that allows people to feel those feelings in real time.
So we've talked about improv on this show in the past, but for those listeners that are maybe brand new to the concept, what's the quick back on the envelope, dirty version of improv? So folks say, what is she talking about, improv?
Yeah. Okay. So besides being the CEO, Chief Edutainment Officer of my company, I am also a professional pretender. That is essentially what improv is. It is making up in the moment, in the response to, this is the actual Wikipedia definition, Brandon, then I'll give you the real deal. It's making up in the moment, in the response to the stimulus of one's immediate environment and inner feelings. That's really the definition from Wikipedia. I know it by heart. What it really means is to listen and to postpone judgment of someone else and respond authentically in the moment to the last thing that someone was said. So together you are collaborating and creating stories through play. That's it.
So, what makes that so? I'll start with why is that so important for people today? Why is this a skill we need to be better at?
So, a couple reasons. I think before 2020, people wore their hypothetical masks to work every single day. And we show up at work and put on our work mask, and now we're working. And instead of trying to be something we're not, why don't we just lean into who we are and embrace that? It's so much easier to just be who we are. So, what improv does is it takes that judgment, that mask, it takes it off, and it allows you to just be in that present moment. When you are present and you're actually listening and responding to what is said, from somebody sitting next to you. It could be a team member, a colleague, a senior leader in your organization. You are actually allowing that person to feel seen, heard, and valued because you are giving them the gift of your presence. When I see teams understand this fundamental, there is an instant shift in the energy. People see themselves differently. People start to take ownership of what they're doing. And ultimately, when people start to take ownership and they see themselves as a contributing factor to this wheel of work, they want to show up more. And the more they want to show up, productivity rises. And we all know what happens when that happens. The organization thrives, the individual thrives, and it's just a win-win. So it's laughter, it's levity, it's positivity, it's fun, but it has such a deeper meaning.
Yeah. I loved your kind of shorthand, but really powerful way of saying when we're fully present, people feel seen, heard, and valued. I love that. Makes total sense to me. So you had me. I'm sold. I love this, Erin. This is great. Now, what makes it so hard? Why is it hard for people to do this?
Yeah. So when people just hear the word, like some leaders that we work with, they won't tell people that we're coming into the organization because people get nervous. And here's the deal, Brandon, you and I right now, we're improvising. I have no idea what you're going to ask me. I'm literally talking and making it up as I go. But when we put a label on something, when we label it and we think, oh my gosh, I'm going without a script. I'm thinking quickly on the feet. I have to trust myself. What? That is very scary to a lot of people. And so it is just like I always say this, improv, anything you want to be better at in your life is just like going to the gym. The more reps you put in, the stronger you get. The more comfortable you get with the uncomfortable, whether it be taking an improv class, whether it be signing up for a cooking class because you're horrible at cooking, whatever it might be that it scares you, the more comfortable you get with that concept, the less scary it becomes. So that is the challenge, is really helping people overcome their own limiting beliefs and blocks. And once people do that, and generally we can make that happen in a session in the first 20 minutes with a group, because all it takes is this domino effect of one person leaning into the positive energy that we create and any improv group creates. And then you're just in play. And it takes time though to break that down. And that is the biggest challenge.
Yeah. Okay. So great opening summary of improv. I'm totally sold. I love this concept. I've loved this concept and I love the way you describe it. Now let's kind of hone in on 2023. What are you seeing as the greatest needs with the audiences you're working for today? What is it that they're seeking to get from their time with you and the work that they do with you?
Yeah. So it's interesting because, okay, I had to overcome my own limiting belief in this. And I'm going to get to your question. I'm going to answer it through this answer. But for a long time, I knew I had a message to share with the world, but I was still learning what that message was. I was still experiencing this message in order to fully understand it so I could teach it. And for the longest time, I was afraid of my own voice, of stepping out from my team of amazing, hilarious improv professionals and teaching this message. Now, once I overcame that limiting belief and I started stepping on stages and realizing that people needed this message more than ever, which I'll get to in just a minute, I witnessed what I witnessed in every workshop, that limiting belief, that block, that fear that we put up, that wall that we put up that prevents us from leaning into the person, the professional, the being that we're supposed to be. So now my team does most of our workshops, which are the power skill training workshops. Things like effective communication are huge with teams right now. Leadership. I will tell you, people are really craving connection when it comes to the work that we do inside of a workshop. When it comes to just individuals, groups of humans, I am seeing women in particular, and I just, any people who have gone through these past 3 years have a very limiting belief of their own self-worth, their own love for themselves, and this idea of failure as this very fearful word has really plagued a lot of people, because a lot of people through the pandemic felt like they were constantly failing. I'm going to speak for myself. I was pivot after pivot after pivot, fail after fail after fail. And so I've leaned into this concept of fail-fluencing. It's not influencing, it's fail-fluencing, but I've leaned into this concept of getting comfortable with failure. And then through that lens, really helping people find their inner voice and self-love, which can help them show up to anyone in their life with a more selfless capability.
So it sounds like the first. It is, but let's start with the. It sounds like you've almost laid it out in like an order. So it's almost like being comfortable with failure is a first starting place. Is that fair?
That is so fair, and that's a perfect way to put it. It's almost as if in order to correct your future, you have to redirect the way that you think about your past. And so I mentioned this to you before. I had to go through my own self-healing journey and look at some of the things that I deemed as failures as gifts. And when you can start to look at failure and recognize that the more that you fail, the frequency of the times that you fail equals the fundamental of your success, you will be able to look at the past in a different way and reframe the failures that are there to come. And so through that, I've been teaching this couple of methodologies based and rooted off the improv stage that really help people see the things, those, I call them WTFs, Brandon, okay? Worst terrifying failures. Their worst, most terrifying failures, they have the ability to redirect that script, to rethink the way that specific event happened, and turn it into an aha moment that they can use for their future.
Okay, Erin, here's a pressure question. Are you ready? What's an example? What's an example of like one of those worst terrifying failure kind of moments? And if you're comfortable sharing even your own, that by reframing it can unlock so much more in us.
Yes. Okay. So the past literally 3 years of my life, I deemed this period of time the 3 Ps, okay, or the 3 PUs, if you will, because it was like the stinkiest time of my life, okay? The first P was pivoting. I had a completely in-person business, Nothing was online, and it was thriving. We had just finished an 85-page growth plan from the Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business school. we were executing against it. It was all about creating opportunities for our business to scale in person in different markets. All of that had to go out of the window. At the same time, the number 2P was people pleasing. Okay. I was a new mom. I was postpartum. I just had a brand new miracle baby boy, and I was giving to him. I was giving to my husband. I was giving to my team. I was giving to my parents. I was giving to my clients and my peers who are small business owners trying to keep their businesses alive. And at the third P during that time was that because of all these emotions that I didn't deal with, I manifested physical pain. So it's pivoting, people pleasing, and pain. And so that is a combination of circumstances, which ultimately led to my WTF, my worst terrifying fear, which was that I lived every single day in physical pain. I had pain that would start in the morning, and when I would go to bed at night, and this was in my back, I would cry myself to sleep. And I could not, it was not diagnosed by doctors. I did blood work, I did x-rays. So I started to really unpack what it was that was causing this pain. And I started using some of the methodologies that I'm happy to share here. And through that methodology, I literally healed myself without drugs, without going through any type of procedure. It was a mental journey to returning back to myself. And then outwardly, because I was able to do that, I was able to show up not as a people pleaser, but as a person who helps people see the best in themselves and do this for themselves.
Wow. That's powerful, Erin. So I don't want you to share the entire methodology. I mean, we need to keep some of this a mystery, but what was maybe a where did you start to kind of come to the realization of what was underneath that pain and to release a little bit of that?
Yeah. I'm happy to share it, Brandon. I'll do it for your audience. We'll do it. It's a full-on method.
It's just between you and me.
Okay. Okay. So it's called Move On. And this is something, it's an acronym. And I'll start off with what the M stands for. The M is marinate. And what I mean by that is literally sit in the suck. Sit in the feelings, allow yourself to process them. So I journaled, I meditated, I practiced self-care, going to acupuncture and chiropractors, and just really allowed myself time to be still. And then the next piece of that, the O of move on, is once that you have marinated in that, you have to be able to officially forgive yourself and own it. So the O is own it. And so that means forgiving yourself first and foremost for the mindset that you've had, this failure mindset. It means taking ownership of the journey that got you there. It's not Susan's fault in accounting. It's your fault, Erin. And making sure you understand why it happened and taking ownership of that. The V is you're going to verify the lessons learned. So what are the 2 to 3 things you want to take out of this experience? The E is an action plan. It stands for evaluate next steps, because you have to take action once you've processed these lessons learned, or there's no point in the lesson. The next O is one of my favorites, and that stands for and that is being still again with what you've processed, the lessons, the action items that you're going to take. And then the N of move on is your next failure, because you're going to have another one and it's going to happen. It's unfortunately, that is why we're here, to learn these lessons and to fail. And so the more that I leaned into these concepts and actually put them into motion and practice for myself, the less fearful I became of almost everything in my life. It's essentially replacing fear with more kind and loving thoughts.
Yeah. So I love that format. I think it's a great kind of process to follow. How long should one expect that to take?
I always say this, marinating is not like a steak. It does not happen overnight. And it's really, for me, that took like weeks, months.
Okay.
It
Okay.
took me a solid probably 4 months to get to the root of this problem.
Okay. So more than a few months, less than a year is kind of our window we could look at. Okay. And it's iterative. It sounds like you kind of it's a lifestyle, it's almost a practice that you do.
Yes, 1,000%. And it has, yeah, exactly. So that leads me to that next piece about self-love, because
Yeah.
it can't just stop once you've moved on. You have to then put the next step into motion, which is continuously practicing these fundamentals and putting time and energy into you so that you can give to the people, the teams, your family, the anybody in your life. And if that's really what started my WTF, my what I call the 3 Ps, that story of pain, pivoting, and people pleasing, was the fact that I never took time to take care of myself. I was
Mm.
just constantly going from thing to thing.
So as we sit here today and talk about it, what's different for you?
Yeah. Well, I'm pain free, Brandon, which is like
Nice.
the number one. Um, the people pleasing aspect of my life really shifted my mentality just as a leader, as a mom, as a human. I was just so worried all the time about what other people would think. I set zero boundaries for myself. So that's a huge thing. I have very strong boundaries, and I definitely make time for rest. I'm one of those people. We have this whole quiz on our website that helps you figure out your wellness avatar. My wellness avatar is the CEO. I have to schedule in rest. Like, I literally have
Mm.
to schedule it in, but I now think of rest as productive versus where I used to just think of, okay, when I get to it, I'll do that. So boundaries and scheduled rest have really shifted me in so many ways. My husband is like, you are a different person. And I also have a mindfulness practice that I had before all of this, but I've really leaned into, and that has helped me tremendously.
So when people go to your workshops, are these some things that they can learn, or do they learn parts of this? What is something they could expect working with you or one of your trainers that might help them make some of these shifts?
Yeah. So all of these things I'm talking about are part of the keynotes that I've started doing, which, again, Brandon, that was a limiting belief for me. I had to get over to get on the stage. I was so used to having this team of hilarious improvisers with me. So both of these concepts, we have a keynote called F Words at Work, which is all about redefining your failures. And then another one is called I See You, which is about self-love. And if we can love ourselves, we can be selfless leaders. And then the team teaches fundamentals like team building, effective communication, taking initiative, creative risks. We have sales workshops, we have internship workshops, but the underlying message of everything we do, the underlying message is to postpone judgment of others and yourself and find the positive through line. That's it. And a lot of
Mm.
people talk about like toxic positivity, and here's where I go with that, because that is a very clear message in the work that we do. Laughter, levity, positivity is so easy to say. It's much harder to do, and it's a choice. And so if every person in the world paid attention to the intention of a positive choice, I mean, I don't think I would have a job. I mean,
Mm.
it would be so different. And so, yeah, I teach positivity but I teach it because we need it. And people need that redirection in their own minds. And if you can make your mind a better place to be, then the words that you speak will be kinder and positive, and then the actions that you take will be positive as well.
So to pivot a little bit, this has been great, Erin. I love this whole concept of what you've developed through your own personal journey and you working with so many other people and helping them make these shifts. When you think about today, I always like to ask this kind of final question of my guests. What is one life hack that people listening here today can start to do tomorrow that can either yield better relationships, better conversations, or just a general healthy life for them? What's one life hack they can start with?
Yes. Okay. This is very new to me, and I've been doing this and I'm super into it. My team is as well. It's called a light saver day. So have you ever heard the phrase, we've heard it, everybody's burning the candle at both ends, right?
Totally.
Right? So when you feel that your candle's light is getting dimmer and your candle is starting to shrink, schedule a light saver day for yourself. And what that means is, let's say I'm a mom, I have kids, or I have a kid, or you're a mom listening and you have kids. You don't not take the kid to the daycare or have the nanny or the help. You give yourself the day to do something that is going to make you feel good. So for me, it's I get up and I meditate. I go for a run or a walk. I'll go to my favorite thrift store. I'll go to my favorite shop that has my favorite smoothies, and I'll spend the day outside. That to me is a perfect day. No one's needing me. My son is taken care of. My husband's doing his own thing. My job knows I'm out of office. It is a light saver day because I'm preserving my own light. I'm not going to a wedding. I'm not taking care of other people or doing something somebody else wants me to do. It is for me. And I have really leaned into this concept with my team, and we all take one lightsaber day a month. And it has changed me tremendously because on that day, I don't have to give to anybody except myself.
I love that idea. It's simple, but really, really important. It just requires that boundary and setting that time and protecting it. And then really listening to yourself and saying, what do I need today? But I think that's such a beautiful and powerful thing to do. Well, Erin, thank you for your time today, your wisdom, your insights. If people want to learn more about you, the work you do, your keynotes, the work your team does, where can they go?
You can go to learntoimproveit.com. There's a little pop-up on there that will ask you if you would like to take our wellness quiz, and that's the quiz I was telling you about. And it'll give you your wellness avatar and then give you tips and tricks on how to create more wellness in your life based off your wellness avatar. And then you can also check out the Improve It podcast on the website as well.
Fantastic. Erin, keep up the great work. Thank you for all the gifts and the light that you give to all of us.
Thank you, Brandon. You too. I love your show. Thank you for having me.
I really enjoyed my conversation with Erin. We did a nice deep dive into improv, and she reminds us that improv is all about being present. And when we're present, people feel seen, heard, and valued, because people are desperate for connection today and desperate to feel seen, heard, and valued. So it's a skill set that's just evergreen, perhaps even more important today. And then Erin took us on her own personal journey of overcoming some of her limiting beliefs, limiting situations. And she talked about that acronym, MOVE ON. And the acronym stands for marinate, sitting in your feelings, really recognizing what's going on. Own it, forgive yourself for any failures, real or otherwise, you may be beating yourself up about. Verify those lessons learned around that. Evaluate your next steps, come up with an action plan. Being still and really reflect on it, and then get ready for the next failure. So it's a nice iterative process to get us from being unstuck to really caring for ourselves and moving on. and improv is all about moving on. So I loved those points. Maybe there was a point in there I didn't mention that you heard. Regardless, reflect on my conversation with Erin and with all of my shows. What's that one thing you can take away to help you improve your relationships, your conversations, and your life, both at home and at work, starting tomorrow?